Good morning and welcome to the Wake.Show. How are you doing today? My name is Chris Fisher, and we got a little show for you today. Welcome to the conversation, and we'll get to stuff you should know here in just a couple of minutes. Go run through some of the stories, the headlines that I pulled off today, and we'll try to figure out the world together. The first thing we have to do is like and share. So, all right, let me make sure we're up and running. All right, I see the audio's working this morning. See the video's working this morning. All right, we are live on Facebook. I see. All right, good. Live on Facebook, YouTube Live, Periscope, Twitter, and before we get things started this morning, we had to do some sharing around here. Hope everybody's doing all right. We have a freeze watch through Thursday, but that's a little misleading because that doesn't really go into effect until later. We're actually going to warm up a little bit here in the Bay Area and get into the 60s. All right, so where's the best? I guess I'll share this through what? The Wake.Show. Ooh, tonight we have karaoke. Ooh, it's going to be cold. It'll be freezing out at Park and Rec tonight. One of the things I like about Park and Rec, where they got me set up there, at the back, there's this huge garage door with the logo on it, and they'll open it up when it's a nice night, and it is just absolutely, when it's a nice night, it's gorgeous. They open up that whole corner of that area, but that ain't gonna happen tonight because it's supposed to get down into the 30s. And even the 20s for some parts of the Bay Area. All right, so there we go. Let's share. We'll share on my timeline. Good morning, and check out my new show. Good morning, and check out. Coming up on the show tomorrow, Chris McCarty is coming back. He says he wants to come back in here after last week. I don't know why. I think he got in his own head. He's an interesting dude, my buddy Chris McCarty. So we'll come back in here and have some fun tomorrow. Bring his guitar, sing some songs. Good morning, and check out my new show, the Wake.Show, at the Wake.Show. There you are. All right. If you're tuning in, you're like, oh, wow, this is really compelling. Thanks, Fish. Thanks for telling me to tune in to you staring down at your phone. Oh, you're right. Good morning, and check out my new show, the Wake.Show, at the Wake.Show. Post. And I got to do this real quickly through Fisher the Man as well. So share. Copy link on that one. Now I have to go back to my pages. It's funny because when I got out of bed this morning, my wife was like, "Make sure you dress warm. It's freezing." And I'm like, "Man, it doesn't feel like it's freezing." And she's like, "Oh yeah, it's a freeze warning." I'm like, "Okay." So I, as you can see, I got 2 layers on. I, put on my my beanie, my head warmer, and. Hold on a second. And headed out the door. I'm like, man, it's 50-something degrees. And then realize what's going on. It is going to get cold later on today. So let's publish a post and check out my new show. My new show called... If you're wondering, like, what the hell are you doing, Fish? Well, when we started this show back in November, it was started with somebody else, Jonny Torres. And so when I would go on the air and set up the show and start going through, he's calling in right now. Hold on a second here. Eric Stratman is calling in early this morning. Let's go ahead and bring him up. How you doing, buddy?
What's up, buddy? How we doing?
I'm doing great, man.
I figured I'd just try you. Let's get this party started early.
We might as well. Hold on a second. I'm sharing the show. Make sure you're sharing the show. Now go on your page and let's see. Check out the new show called.
Can I do that while I'm live?
Yeah. Well, I don't know, man. Oh, you mean on your own phone?
Yeah, because I'm gonna cut it off.
I don't know. I don't know if it's up there, hanging up on me or not. But let's see. Check out the new show. Check out my new show called the Wake.Show at the Wake.Show. So how's the, I'm sitting there talking about freeze warnings here across the Bay Area.
Yeah, I heard that. And that's kind of funny.
Yeah, because I'm sure you're already freezing where you are.
Yeah, perspective is a little bit different. I think we warmed up to 23 degrees this morning.
Warmed up to 23 degrees. Well, that's nice.
Up from Monday morning when I came in, it was negative 11.
Jeez. Negative 11. How are you dealing with that, man? You're a Florida boy.
You adapt, man. It's awesome. It's just, I never thought I'd be able to do it, but, I don't work outside. If I worked outside, it'd be absolutely horrendous here. But, it's good. It's all fun.
All right. Well, let's talk about, wait a second here. I'm hitting buttons that I don't need to be hitting. There we go.
That's what she said.
Yeah, let's just stick with that button right there. All right, Eric Stratman from T&L Nutrition Coaching. How you doing this morning, sir?
Good, man. Good. You?
Good. I'm doing all right, man. I'm looking forward to this freeze that's getting ready to roll through the area here.
Excellent.
All right, so let's talk about what you're talking to your clients about this week, the third week in January, people trying to start, lifestyle changes, get back into the gym, all that good stuff. And I would imagine it's probably about right now, too, that you really start to see that first wave of people fall off.
Yeah. We're starting to get our waves in. It's always been my experience that I try to push people about this time to start it because they have probably done and failed on their own by now. So with our programming, now we get to say, okay, well, this is time to step it up. You've been logging a little bit. You're kind of failing on your own. And now it's the time to say, well, let's buckle down and really try to start hitting our numbers, not just logging our food. And that becomes that challenge because one of the challenges we're releasing right now is lose 10 pounds, up to 10 pounds in 10 days. And people hear that and they're like, oh, wow, I'd love to do that. Well, as soon as you log your nutrition and start hitting your numbers, everybody loses anywhere between 3 and 7 pounds in that first week. So you're already well on your way to that 10. And that's why we say up to. Not everybody even has 10 pounds to lose, but they want to, they want to hit that number. But as soon as you start logging your nutrition and you get 7, 10 days consistently hitting your number, that weight just starts falling off because your metabolism regulates and you're on fire and burning some calories.
We talk about one of the things that's been in the news the past couple of years, and that is people going gluten-free. And I don't know if you can put this in better perspective for me, because it seems like what I'm reading, most things are saying people should not be going gluten-free unless you have celiac disease or something similar. And if you are trying, this trend, this fad is not good for you.
What, the gluten-free
yeah.
fad? It's not good for you?
Unless you have celiac. Well, I don't know. Can you help?
Well, this is, it's interesting about that. I mean, we all have some level of allergy to gluten and to grains because it's one of those things that's very hard for your body to process. It's a very high complex carbohydrate. So as your body breaks it down, it boosts your blood sugar and your insulin level, which we talked about insulin before, that it's a storage hormone. So as soon as you start boosting your insulin, your body is signaled to store everything you're eating. So what I encourage people to do, whether they believe it or not, on the irritation for celiacs, because obviously those people absolutely cannot have gluten,
right,
or there's, bad consequences, is try going gluten-free for 30 days. There's so many good options out there. And it's, pretty simple. I mean, it's really staying away from bread and some cereals, and that's it. It's not, and when you take those processed carbohydrates out of your diet anyway, you're already ahead of the game in keeping your insulin low and burning more calories and being more efficient with your blood sugar and your insulin.
Is gluten-free and carb-free, no carbs, the same thing?
No. So gluten is a protein that's found mainly in grains, but some other ingredients. But it is definitely not the same. So there's every bread and cereal, pizza, you name it, that's a gluten-free option, but they're definitely not free of carbohydrates. It's still carbohydrates that you're getting. So if you're having your oatmeal, there's a gluten-free option. There's a, gluten enriched. And, as I miss, my wife and I were talking about this the other day, she pulled out and found a coupon for mellow mushroom. And that place is yummy. And
do you miss the mellow mushroom?
They promote gluten enriched dough, and nobody really knows what that is. It's just really, it gives the elasticity to dough and allows the binding process to be a lot easier. That's why when you see gluten-free stuff, it's either really hard or it falls apart easily because that binding agent's not there. So now, you'll find companies that either do gluten enriched or something that, obviously they're going gluten-free. But I encourage everybody to try anything, and it has to be 30 days. It can't be 3 days, because when you completely evacuate it out of your system, then you're able to see, well, this is the results my body's getting from it, or this is, do I feel any better? And you typically don't realize how good you feel with those things out of your system until you reintroduce it. So go gluten-free for a month and then go to mellow mushroom and tell me how your stomach feels and how you slept that day and where your energy's at. It makes all the difference in the world.
Now, are there things, you've been doing this a very long time, are there things that frustrate you about your own clients? Year in and year out, you're seeing the same kinds of things that you're having to harp on.
It's and it's probably my favorite saying I hear in the gym or through nutrition is, I can't. Well, you can. I mean, you're eating every single day. I have, somebody here locally that, it's really a health issue now for him, and he's so overweight it could, it could mean a heart attack for him, and he's got 2 young kids, and he's like, well, it's tough. I'm on the run. I'm like, but you still stop to eat. So just log it and let's see. Let's stop putting, you got those blinders on, like, oh, I hope I do better. I hope I get healthier. But it's really just cutting the crap and saying my health means more to me than that. And that's where we're really trying to emphasize that piece of find a motivator that is outside yourself. Is it your wife? Is it your kids? Is it your parents? Is it your dog? Whatever. What do you want to be the best version of you for? And focus on that for your results. When
it comes to guys like that, do you ever talk to them about mental health, about going to see a professional, saying, obviously you're using food where you should be using antidepressants or anti-anxiety stuff. This is where your food comes in. You need to go to talk to someone. We need to have a comprehensive approach to your health.
Yes, there is.
Or do you just yell at him? Are you the psychiatrist? Do you just yell at him and say, screw you, you can do this?
Well, it's typically resolved with this. A big open hand slap.
All right, you're old school. You're old school when it comes.
You suck. Quit your belly aching. No, I mean, not that people don't need that, because they do. But, again, it's really putting in perspective. We're trying to resolve a habit that people have had for 25, 35, 45, 55 years of eating a certain way, of consuming whatever they want. So I put that in the back of their mind that and I encourage you the same thing, is that don't think we're going to fix this in 3 weeks. It didn't take 3 weeks to get into this habit. So it's okay. We have bumps in the road, and you'll always hear that consistently average trumps seldom perfection. If we're hitting and we're doing okay, that's okay. Okay is better than not doing it at all, because you're going to get some result. And then when you start to see the scale and the measurements ticking down a little, and then there's a different motivator. Then you talk about the mental health side. We show people, oh, there is results. I can do a little bit better. And then they start logging a little bit more, getting a little more consistent, maybe food prepping a little bit. Or, there's so many of the companies now that are there that actually do prepared meals that are pretty cheap. When I was in Tampa, I used CaterFit, and they would deliver meals twice a week right to my house, and it could be 3 meals a day, 1 meal, however many I want, and they would do it on like Sunday nights and Wednesday nights, and it would be enough food for the next 2, 3, 4 days, depending on how much I ordered. And some people look at those services and say, well, man, that's really expensive. And when you look at the amount of time that it takes you to prepare your own meal, or the money you're spending to go through a drive-through or go out to lunch every day, it really is a much better investment in yourself.
All right, thank you so much, Eric Stratman from TNL Nutrition Coaching. You have a one. Hey, before we, can you just give us another look around that that beautiful new gym of yours?
Yeah, well, this is actually the facility here. You know, this thing's no joke in here. But if I could get out here, and I'll run out here real quick. This is the beauty of. You can see it's all dark because.
Well, because it's early.
Everybody's, you see a little turf. Well, watch this here now. We're going to go.
Oh, look at that. Look at that. Good
this
for you,
place is sick.
That is.
You know, and above me, you can't even see that. There's a ton of batting cages. There's a track that goes all the way around this place. It's kind of tough to see because we got this net in the front, but yeah, this place is no joke.
So do you have, tournaments come in there and whatnot too and use that facility?
Yeah. So we get, it's baseball, soccer, lacrosse, Nerf guns, dodgeball, you name it. It's awesome. We got to get you guys up here to come visit
No
this.
kidding.
But this place is legit. And for us up here, when it's 20 degrees outside,
This is perfect.
and then you're, this isn't something you see every day in Florida or really any day. It's when you go outside and you're like, hey, how's our parking lot looking? And there's a tractor plowing your parking lot because you have a crap ton of snow outside. It is pretty picturesque. I'm going to walk outside. Ooh, it's chilly.
Yeah, I bet.
So you can see that these guys are killing it out here. But we can give you guys some views on things that you don't really get to see every day in Florida. But it's it's a beautiful scene when it's snow, but man, it is freaking cold.
I bet. All right, man. We'll get it back in there and warm the cockles, and we'll talk to you next week.
All right, guys. Have a good one. God bless.
Derek, take care. That is Eric Stratman from TNL Coaching. Make sure you track him down on Facebook. TNL Nutrition Coaching. Sorry, TNL Nutrition Coaching on Facebook. All right, we'll get back to the, the news, stuff you should know here in a second. Oh, you cute little dog face, you get off my computer for now. We'll come back to you. We got it. Dog owners would rather be with pets than friends, study suggests. We will get to that coming up on the Wake.Show this morning. All right, let's before we get to stuff you should know, let's go ahead and say good morning. Good morning to Cords. Chris Brown, how you doing? 15 minutes drive to lunch there, 30 minutes. 3 guys at my work eat at least 2 meals a day, they say. 3 guys at work eat out at least 2 meals a day. That's where I was. Sorry about that. That's where I was. For until my wife, while I was single there, I ate out, or yeah, if it wasn't sitting down at a restaurant, meaning eating something that you did not prepare yourself, that you bought somewhere. So in the morning, 7-Eleven was very common for me to go through a 7-Eleven at 4:30 in the morning, 4:30 in the morning, and get either a breakfast sandwich or a Cuban. I don't know what it is about the hot pressed Cubans, but that's like a breakfast sandwich to me. And then later that day, I would likely eat out. I would eat out at least 2 or 3 times a day too during that time. Now, coming in, why are we hating on mellow mushroom? Never hating on mellow mushroom, Cords. Never hating on mellow mushroom. All right, so let's get to some stuff you should know. Boom, boom, doodle, doodle, doo, 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 doodle, doodle, doo, doo, doo. All right. Mostly sunny today with a high in the low 60s, but that will quickly change this afternoon. Temperatures across the Bay Area expected to drop below freezing overnight. The region will be under a freeze watch through Thursday. Here's stuff you should know for Wednesday, January 17th. More on on the cold. A 1,700-mile swath of ice and snow is making travel treacherous for millions, and it's all moving east. The deep freeze has shut down multiple interstates from Louisiana to Alabama, where the state of emergency is in effect, to Texas. The icy conditions are also doing a number on airports, with more than 1,500 flights canceled and thousands more delayed. And which brings us to the flu. The flu is not getting any easier. or any better. The influenza virus that sickened millions of Americans this season is already the most widespread outbreak since public health authorities began keeping track more than a dozen years ago. Now, with the threat of more strains emerging, it might even get worse, they're saying. Flu is everywhere in the U.S. right now, said Dan Jernigan, a director of the influenza division at the National Center for Immunization and Respiratory Diseases. Quote, this is the first year we've had this is the first year we've had the entire continental U.S. be the same color on the graph, meaning there's widespread activity in all of the continental U.S. at this point, unquote. The commanding officers of 2 U.S. Navy destroyers involved in deadly collision last year in the Pacific Ocean face court-martials and military criminal charges, including negligent homicide. The U.S. Navy said in a statement on Tuesday, filing charges against the officer marks the Navy's latest effort to address the problems that led to collisions involving its warships in Asia, in which 17 sailors were killed. The Navy has already dismissed several senior officers, including the commander of the 7th Fleet, as a result of the collisions. The clamor over President Donald Trump's use of vulgarity has bled into a second week Tuesday as aides took issue with details and accounts of his comments, and a Republican senator who was present for the original mark said the situation had become a shit show. We go from shithole to shit show. Trump was said to have uttered shithole during last Thursday's conversation, described countries in Africa during immigration talks with senators in the Oval Office, a version supported by Senator Dick Durbin, a Democrat out of Illinois, and some Republicans. Now, Senator John McCain on Tuesday condemned President Trump's combative attitude towards the press and called on Congress to protect journalists worldwide. Whether Trump knows it or not, quote unquote, these efforts are being closely watched by foreign leaders who are already using his words as cover as they silence and shutter one of the key pillars of democracy, McKay said in an opinion piece published in the Washington Post. McCain called the Trump administration's treatment of journalists inconsistent at best and hypocritical at worst, particularly when it comes to condemning attacks on press abroad. And that is stuff you should know for today. We'll go over some of the stories, some of the headlines that I pulled up here momentarily. Let's see. Chris Brown, 15 minutes to drive to lunch there, 30 minutes to eat, 15 minutes drive back. Lunch equals $10 time driving, $10 if $20 an hour. So what? I don't know what you're trying to say, Chris. I'm half an idiot. Let's not forget that. All right, so we'll go over some of the headlines. Let's see. We have you know what's weird? Remember how on Monday I was promoting, for those of you that go way back with me, I was promoting Napoleon, one of my he's my my second morning show partner. Nate Farmer is a guy that I went to high school with. He and I went to a SAC Comedy Theater in Orlando. For a little instruction in our earlier days, and we had some fun on the radio. And so wanted to have him on, and he said yeah. And then I texted him 3 times on Monday, never heard back from him. It's one of those things where you're like, did I do something? That did I piss him off? You're going back through your head, going back through the text message, going, did I say something weird? Say something off? And of course, it's just so I don't even know what happened. But my alleged good friend stood me up. Tomorrow, Chris McCarty will be coming by the studio as we continue to search for a co-host / producer / social media expert / to complement what we are doing here. But are you a pet owner? Dog owners would rather be with pets than friends, a study suggests. Okay, all right. How about this? Is there going to be a part of the story where there's a both thing? Because I wonder what our friends say about us behind our backs, my wife and I, because we are nuts when it comes to our dogs, when it comes to our little Yorkies, Roxy and Joey, who, by the way, I'm going to go pick up after the show today. They've been staying at the in-laws for the last week while Lauren went out of town, I went out of town, and then I had to seal grout over the last couple of days. It was just easier to keep the dogs out of the house. But here's what's going to happen. When I get the dogs, just because of the way things are happening around here, and because of, no, let's be honest here. Let's be honest. It probably has everything to do with Roxy being my therapy dog. But the thing is that, you know, I have the dogs at home, and when we get done with the show here, you know, have some work to do, but then the anxiety starts to build the longer that the dogs are at the house by themselves. And I want to go home and make sure their needs are taken care of. So here's what's going to happen starting tomorrow, maybe, or Friday. And that is, excuse me, I'm going to bring him to work with me every day, which is exciting because what will happen is, let me get back to this other shot here. You see how we have the couch over, the guest couch for when a guest come in here. This is where they sit, you know, and da-da-da-da. Well, I'm going to put a camera on that couch because I know what's going to happen is my dogs are going to end up there. And so as I'm going through the horrible news of the day, I'll just cut to the couch. We'll get a nice tight shot on the couch, and you'll at least watch my dogs resting. And that'll bring your blood pressure down a little bit as we go over the crappy stories of the day. But let's start off with this particular story right here. And more than half American dog owners admit they flake out on social events to hang out with their pet. Now, how many of you have ever used your dog as an excuse or your animals as an excuse to leave an event? Oh, man, we'd like to stay longer, but, you know, we got to get home and let the dogs out. They've been home all day. Ain't nothing wrong with that. Done it before. The study of 2,000 dog owners found skipping out on human commitments specifically to get a bit of quality furry friend time is a common occurrence. Now, this is more than half of American, they did 2,000 dog owners, okay? More than half of them admitted that they will flake out on social events to stay home with their dogs. The bond is understandable given the way that they aid our mental health, from their ability to lessen relationship stress to softening bad days at work and more. The average dog gets their owner through 5 stressful events per week. All right. How do you figure that kind of stuff? All right, let's not be ridiculous. 4.83 stressful events per week. The results emerge from Link AKC, creators of a smart collar for dogs, and pinpointed the mental, physical, and emotional health bonuses of dog ownership. The study also found that many owners say their pet genuinely aided their ability to get over a breakup or handle the death of a loved one. Have you ever come home and just grabbed your dog and start talking to your dog like you were talking to a friend because you needed to get some stuff off your chest? Don't lie. Don't lie. Because I just don't want to be the only person that shares a story like this, but I will. So, one of the reasons how I need to pull up a little picture of Roxy while I'm talking about her. One of the reasons that I ended up getting Roxy McPoopenstein from a buddy of mine. Oh, perfect. Oh no, it's not quite perfect. Not quite perfect, but it'll do here. That was me taking a picture of a picture, so that's why it looks so stupid. So that's my little Roxy McPoopenstein. So how I ended up with Roxy is I've had her now 5 years or so, 5 or 6 years. But at the time that I got her, I was going through some stuff. And I wasn't getting out of bed in the morning. So, okay, I remember now. So I had the morning show was over at X, and I had gone to afternoon drive. So I didn't have to be to work till 11 or something, 11 or noon or something like that. And so it was very difficult for me to get out of bed at the time. I'd just lost my dad, and I don't know what. There's a lot of stuff going on, and I just was at a bad place. So my buddy comes to me and says, "Hey, I'm over at his house, and I've played with Roxy a couple times." And he's like, "Would you like her? Would you like to take her home?" I'm like, "Sure. She seems pretty cool." And he's like, "All right, well, let me talk to my wife about it," because they had, I think at the time, their kids were like 3 and 2 or 3 and 1, something along those lines. And it was becoming difficult to take care of the 2 kids and this little dog who needs a lot of attention. So I thought about it, and I was thinking, man, if I were to get this dog, then that would force me to get up in the morning, right? and to get me out of the house. And that's what I need right now. So a couple weeks passes. I guess, they were going back and forth. It wasn't an easy decision, to make. And because they had her for 6 years, but she's a handful. She is a handful. The first thing he says when he goes, all right, it's a done deal. He comes over to the house and he hands her to me and says, be careful. She's a runner. And sure enough, within a matter of minutes, she's out the door, taking off, running around the neighborhood. And, I'm chasing after her. But she got me out of bed every single day, from that point forward. All right, here's another little adorable pic of my Roxy McPoopenstein. There we go. Let's do that. Oh, look at that face. Look at that little, don't you just want to smoosh that little face? And not only that, but come to find out, she had some social issues herself. And so I started taking her to the park literally every single day. The first day that I took her to the park and put her down, the dogs came up and she sat in some weird position and screamed. It wasn't even a bark. You can't even call it a bark. It was a strange, it wasn't a yelp. It was, I don't know, a scream is the best way to describe it. And I felt so bad for her, in that moment. What do you want to do? You want that to stop. So what do you want to reach down, pick her up, hold her, and so she stops doing that. But I knew that was the worst thing that I could possibly do. I know you're thinking I'm a horrible person, and you might be right. I'm not sure. But I didn't. If I sensed her safety was in jeopardy, I wouldn't have allowed that. Okay. But from my vantage point, this was just a dog who had never seen another dog, it looked like, and just needed some time to get acclimated. So, like what I just took her to the park every single day for 4.5 months straight. All right, I might have missed a day or two in there, but for the most part, every single day for 4.5 months. And it was every couple of weeks that I would see some progress in her, where she wouldn't be terrified. Whatever. All right. So long story short, she's good. She's great now at the park. She still likes to kind of be independent, be by herself. And if there's too much energy, she'll, throw a bark, over her shoulder. Settle down. Settle down. But for the most part, she's come a long way. And so have I. Because like I said, I was in a place. And she got me out of bed every single morning, got me out to the park. So I'm socializing with the people at the park as well. And so I can't, so then not years later, but a little while later when, my wife and I start really dating about the same time that I got her. I think my wife was dating me to get access to Roxy, that little cute little face right there. And, yeah, my wife still teases me saying that I need to just go ahead and have her officially called my therapy dog so we can take her anywhere. But come on, you can take her almost anywhere, for goodness sakes. All right, let's get back to this here. Let's get back to the story. So, let's see. Let's bring them in. They're going to start coming in every single day. My wife, yay, Elliot, my dog is the cause of 5 of my stressful events a week. And did Cam do that? Nope, that wasn't Cam that did that picture. We paid my wife sent it off to some company and did that. All right, so the results emerged. The study also found that many owners say their pet genuinely aided their ability to get over a breakup or handle the death of a loved one. In fact, 6 in 10 survey takers said their dog often takes care of them in some way, shape, or form, reinforcing the important two-way relationship between dogs and humans. Is there anybody watching? Johnny! Hey, Johnny, man, if you got a second, call in, message in, fire up. If you got a second, I don't want you to do anything that is, I've got you pulled up right here if you want to go ahead and chime in. But I'd love to talk to you. I'd like to see how your first week went, Johnny. But back to the dogs here. In fact, 6 in 10 survey takers said their dog often takes care of them in some way, shape, or form, reinforcing the important two-way relationship between dogs and humans. I was just, hold on a second here. One of the things I'm supposed to be reading right now is Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. But I realized I'm just not going to get any reading done, so I've downloaded the audiobook. There's no shame in that. And one of the quotes is there, one of the things he's talking about, and I can't remember in what context, but basically was saying that about dogs, that they have all the, he was quoting somebody else, but that dogs have all the amazing qualities of people with none of the downside, none of the horrible qualities of people. According to the study, 82% of dog owners noticed an improvement in their mental and emotional health risks thanks to their four-legged therapist. Specifically, single responders said their dog helped them through an average of nearly 4.83 stressful events per week. How the hell do you even know that kind of stuff? Man and woman's best friend has proven to be a reliable furry shoulder to cry on during major life events. As 4 in 10, I don't think I've ever grabbed little Roxy McPoopenstein and cried into her little furriness. I'm positive, but I know that she's helped me along the way. More than half dog owner survey, they said seeing their pet when they come home makes them feel extremely happy, and 88% said their dog made them a better person. Is there any greater feeling than coming in the door when you have dogs? I don't know. From what I understand, I guess there's a couple of cats out there, or cats will pick up the straight every now and again and actually greet their owners. But think about it. How long do you have to be out of the house? 5 minutes? You're out of the house for 5 minutes and come back in, and your dog acts like you were a soldier rumored dead at war. You're like, you're rumored dead at war, and then everybody is gathering around, Thanksgiving dinner, and then all of a sudden that soldier comes walking in the door. And the way that everybody, that's the way you feel every single time. That's the way I feel every single time I walk in the door, is like I don't know, I'm some hero coming back from war, and this dog is just so happy. So, all right, I know, I'll get off that subject there. I know not everybody is a dog owner or a dog lover. Let's get to some other stuff here. Oh, here we go. Before we get to this, let's see here. My cats stand at the top of the stairs when anyone leaves and is there when we get home. I think it's just confirmation that we're actually gone and they don't have to put up with us anymore. I'm sure it's because they miss you. This story, CVS Health said Monday that it'll ban, what do you guys think of this? CVS Health said Monday that it'll ban photo manipulation in its store brand makeup marketing and promotional displays, a move that acknowledges growing awareness of the harmful nature of touched-up images. The nation's largest drugstore chain will also require other makeup and beauty brands to sell products in its aisles to commit to the photo manipulation ban by 2020 or face having an alert label placed on the images. With some 9,600 stores nationwide, CVS is one of the nation's largest selling beauty products. Sellers of beauty products, giving the company significant influence over makeup marketing. All right, so look at your computer screens real quick, or look at your phones real quickly. Let me turn off the scroll, or the crawl, the crawl. And the image on the right is the original image. The image on the left is the touched up image. And you see there's a major difference there in wrinkles. Also a mole, a couple of, you know what word I almost used, and I'm almost embarrassed. Blemishes. I was getting ready to say blemishes. See, it's ingrained in all of us. A mole is not a blemish. It's a beauty mark. So let's see what else we might, let's see if they added any extra cleavage to her. No, you see all the sunspots or moles basically on the right side, the right image, but the left image, they go in and they take it all out. to try to make her look perfect. CVS Pharmacy President Helena Folks, who made the official announcement on the National Retail Federation's convention in New York, or at the convention, said the decision reflects an acknowledgement that unrealistic body images are a significant driver of health issues, especially among women. About 80% of the chain's customers are women. Quote, we're all consuming massive amounts of media every day, and we're not necessarily looking at imagery that is real and true. To try to hold ourselves up to be like those women is impossible, because even those women don't look like how they look. And that's so true. Even those women that we're trying, it's not even we. It's our little girls. From the first magazines they get, or watching their mom beat themselves up as she's getting dressed. And it goes way back. And it's really heartbreaking when you watch how so many of our women, and I know men get caught up in this too, but not as much as women do. How they just turn into insecure puddles of nothingness. It's a shame. But what are you going to do? All right, what else? What else do you want to get to today? Let's see, it's 7:52. Hillsborough firefighter fired after being accused of withholding evidence from a biker gang shooting, also accused of violating anti-gang policy. This gentleman right here. So I guess he used to be an outlaw himself. A local firefighter has been fired after accusations that he refused to hand over evidence from a motorcycle gang shooting. Hillsborough County Fire Rescue firefighter Clint Walker was an outlaw for a couple years. The Outlaws Motorcycle Club is considered a criminal gang among law enforcement and county officials, says Walker's continued loyalty to the gang could cost him his career. Now, he's saying this is not true because this guy's also a captain. He's a firefighter himself, or a retired firefighter. So he's saying we'll get to the details here, but I just want you to, I want to set this up for you. He's saying that he was just there to support a fellow firefighter, and that this had nothing to do with the Outlaws whatsoever. I don't believe him, and you'll find out why here in a second. So in an exclusive interview, this is coming from ABC Action News, by the way, with Walker, he says, it was very one-sided investigation. I didn't do what they're trying to say I did. He's accused of refusing to hand over crime scene evidence to a sheriff's deputy and wearing his uniform off-duty to gain unauthorized access to a hospital. All right. Now, this started after James Costa, a former Hillsborough fire captain and president of local Outlaws chapter, was shot while riding his bike down Highway 41 in July. First responder Jason Vasquez called Walker at his home while Walker was off duty. Walker then rushed to the hospital and waited for the rescue unit. The investigation report says, without permission, Walker jumped into the rescue and changed into his uniform to, quote, gain unauthorized access and utilize his position as a uniformed firefighter for personal reasons or gain. Well, now Walker has a different perspective. He says, quote, that's wrong. That's incorrect. That's a misrepresentation of the facts. The fact is I wore a department shirt to show solidarity and brotherhood for a retired firefighter. Okay? So he's saying, I didn't go put on my uniform so I could get unauthorized access. I put on just a shirt just to show solidarity. While in the emergency room, Walker takes possession of Costa's belongings, including his sacred outlaw MC vest, all right, which even Walker admits is not to be possessed by outsiders. Walker put the outlaw's clothing in the car. So this is where, to me, I think you start to see the truth, and that is this guy still has loyalty to the Outlaws, and he wanted to make sure that this sacred vest... Humans are, I love humans. I love humans. We are a pretty cool primate. It is hilarious. A sacred outlaw vest. Does this go back to the time of ancient Egypt or something? Which even Walker admits is not so. So this is the thing. He went in there and goes, these cops aren't going to get this, or it's not this vest is not going to become evidence. This is sacred. And so I'm going to procure this. I'm going to take care of it myself. The outlaw's vest was considered evidence for a shooting investigation. When a deputy asked Walker for it, Walker refused to hand it over. Another allegation Walker denies. He says, I did not refuse. All I did was redirect. This is where I start to get angry, because now you sound like a douchebag lawyer. Now you sound like a douchebag politician. Now you sound like all the rest of the liars who are out there lying to us. I didn't refuse. I redirected. There's a big difference. I redirected her to speak to the owner of the belongings. No, a cop asked you for evidence that you took out of a man's hospital room, and you refused. Plain and simple. Why? Likely because you're still an outlaw at heart. Other allegation that a reporter, quote, I guess the difference here is this is a law enforcement officer needing evidence for a crime scene. Walker, right. And in this instance, there was no reason why they can't ask him directly. Walker, a cop asked you for evidence, and you didn't give it to him. The county's investigator and former FBI agent states Walker was hindering the deputy and interfered with the collection of evidence, a claim that Walker passionately disputes. Quote, if I had involved myself in this investigation, I would have been arrested and charged with a crime, not to mention the investigation is to find the shooter of someone who shot my friend. Why would I interfere in that? Unquote. Now, according to the report, a sheriff's supervisor had to step in and eventually made an agreement with Costa to take pictures of the vest. Walker eventually gave it up. The investigator notes, while he cannot conclude definitively that Walker has continued affiliation with the Outlaws, quote, Mr. Walker continues to show loyalty to the OMC, unquote. In addition, the county concludes in a disciplinary report that there is sufficient evidence to support a finding of Mr. Walker's continued affiliation with the Outlaws Motorcycle Club, which violates their gang policy. Walker says his loyalty was to a firefighter, not to an outlaw. Do you believe that? Do you believe that this was about loyalty to a firefighter, not an outlaw? Did he grab his firefighter gear and try to protect it, put it in the car? No. He grabbed his outlaw stuff because no outsiders are allowed to touch it. No outsiders were allowed to be in possession of it, and he knew that it was about to become evidence. And I don't get it. I don't get it. Even though I'm born and raised in the South, and I'm from a little redneck town, and you think that I came up in a similar culture, maybe I did. I just that loyalty thing has never been part of my makeup. Where that blind loyalty, I don't know. It's just something that kind of bothers me. Quote, I've shown loyalty to a captain of mine, to a firefighter who was injured. That's the only thing I've shown loyalty to in this case. Let's get to stuff you should know before we get back to some of the other headlines in the news today. And mostly sunny with a high in the low 60s, but that will quickly change late this afternoon. Temperatures across the Bay Area are expected to drop below freezing overnight. The region is under a freeze watch through Thursday. Here's stuff you should know for January 17th. A 1,700-mile swath of ice and snow is making travel treacherous for millions, and it's all moving east. The deep freeze has shut down multiple interstates from Louisiana to Alabama, where there's a state of emergency in effect, to Texas. The icy conditions are also doing a number on the area's airports, with more than 1,500 flights canceled and thousands more delayed. The influenza virus that has sickened millions of Americans this season is already the most widespread outbreak since public health authorities began keeping track more than a dozen years ago. Now, with the threat of more strains emerging, the flu season might get worse. Quote, flu is everywhere in the U.S. right now. This is coming from Dan Jernigan, the director of the Influenza Division at the National Center for Immunization and Respiratory Diseases. Quote, this is the first year we've had the entire continental U.S. be the same color on the graph, meaning there is widespread activity in all of the continental U.S. at this point, unquote, and flu season hasn't even peaked yet. The commanding officer, now granted, there was another story, I got to put it out there. There was another story last week from another expert somewhere else saying that we might be getting lucky and that flu season may already have peaked and that it won't get worse. So the commanding officers of 2 U.S. Navy destroyers involved in deadly collisions last year in the Pacific Ocean faced court-martials and military criminal charges, including negligent homicide, the U.S. Navy said in a statement on Tuesday. Filing charges against the officers marks the Navy's latest effort to address the problems that led to collisions involving its warships in Asia, in which 17 sailors were killed. The Navy has already dismissed several senior officers, including the commander of the 7th Fleet, as a result of the collisions. The clamor over President Donald Trump's use of vulgarity bled into a second week Tuesday as aides took issue with details and accounts of his comments, and a Republican senator who was present for the original remarks said the situation, and this is Lindsey Graham, by the way, had become a shit show. From shithole to shit show. Trump was said to have uttered shithole during last Thursday's conversation to describe countries in Africa during immigration talks with senators in the Oval Office, a version supported by Senator Dick Durbin, Democrat of Illinois, and some Republicans as well. So who do you believe on this one? So where do you stand on this? Or does it even matter? Does it matter one way or another? Senator John McCain of Arizona on Tuesday condemned President Trump's combative attitude towards the press and called on Congress to protect journalists worldwide. Whether Trump knows it or not, these efforts are being closely watched by foreign leaders who are already using his words as cover as they silence and shutter one of the key pillars of democracy. McCain said in an opinion piece published in the Washington Post. McCain called the Trump administration's cheap treatment of journalists, quote, inconsistent at best and hypocritical at worst, particularly when it comes to condemning attacks on the press abroad. And that is stuff you should know for Wednesday, January 17th. You guys ready? You guys ready? All right, we'll get right to that Lindsey Graham. We'll get more to the Lindsey Graham thing right now. But are you ready for the cold? It is going to be cold later on today. Woke up this morning thinking it was going to be freezing, and it's 50-something degrees, but the front will be pushing through later on this afternoon and dropping temperature significantly, and we will have a freeze warning in effect across the entire Bay Area. And then for those of you that live a little bit in the northern side, Pasco, Citrus, you definitely will be freezing tonight. All right, so let's get to the Lindsey Graham. We'll talk a little President Trump. Now, let me check some comments first before we move on. Good morning, John. Snowing in Brooklyn this morning, huh? Sarah, my stepdad was a biker and part of a MC. Bikers are weird about their colors. To them, the only thing I can liken it to is dog tags with the military. Yeah, those are things that I guess you can't really relate to. And I guess maybe it's the same thing how people, the same thing with the American flag. Well, I don't know. Like I said, humans are very interesting. How we will attach our identities, our core beings to inanimate objects like sacred vests, flags, dog tags. But I listen. Even though I can't fully get it, I can intellectually begin to understand. For instance, I can visualize the jungles of Vietnam and the horror stories that came out of there. And you're wondering moment to moment whether you're going to live the next moment. And then all of a sudden, peeking out through the trees, through the brush somewhere, you see that red, white, and blue. You see that American flag, and everything changes then because all of a sudden there's that support. So, I haven't been through it. I'm sure had I would have a completely different view on the American flag and those kinds of things. But like I said, intellectually, I can take a step back and go, okay, I can get, I understand to a degree. Though it's hard for me to viscerally, personally, deep down, get it. So anyway, let's go back to Donald Trump, the shit show versus the shithole. The clamor over President Donald Trump's use of the vulgarity. Trump was said to have uttered this. So asked about Trump's comments challenging his honesty, Durbin told reporters, now keep in mind, Durbin is a Democrat. Listen, by the way, if you're a Democrat, don't think I'm being disparaging in this moment. I'm not saying, oh, he's a Democrat. I mean, there's the opposition, so you always have to put that in context when you're talking about political figures. If something is coming from the opposition, But the thing is, and this is why I think that it happened the way that they said it happened. It's because when this first went down, remember, the White House came out and embraced it. They didn't confirm that he said exactly what he said, but they did not deny it, and then embraced the overall sentiment of what the president was trying to get accomplished, saying he's putting Americans first, that whole thing. And it wasn't for another 48 hours that I think they started to backpedal on some of this stuff. So that's why I have a feeling this stuff happened the way it happened. Also, the Republicans that were asked initially about this and said, I don't know. Then 2 days later, again, we're on the Sunday shows, passionately denying that this happened. The first time you were asked, you're like, man, I don't know. And then 2 days later, all of a sudden, you're passionately denying this. It likely happened. All right, so let's say it did. What does that even mean? What does that mean to you? Does it mean it's just somebody who is being crass when talking about a sensitive subject? Or is that more evidence that this person is fundamentally a racist? So later, Republican Lindsey Graham of South Carolina said Trump had drastically changed his tune on a compromise immigration bill just before the Thursday meeting. Graham said Trump had been badly served by his staff and the situation had turned into a shit show. There you go. Now Lindsey Graham's in on the. See, by the way, I'm not one of those people going, hey, this administration is bringing down the rest of the country. It's bringing down the White House, the elegance that goes along with the Oval Office. I told you, the censorship rules that we have right here at the Wake.Show is radio rules plus shit. Radio rules plus shit. Why? Because I don't think shit's a big deal. There's an internal debate in the West Wing over whether Trump said shithole or shithouse. Why would he have said shithouse? Why is there a debate? There's not. Because you wouldn't say shithouse. Those countries are shithouse. You wouldn't say that. You would say shitholes. He said shitholes. One person who attended the meeting told aides they heard the latter expletive, while others recalled the president saying the more widely reported shithole, according to a person briefed in the meeting, but not authorized to speak publicly about private conversations. The person believes the discrepancy may be why some Republican senators are denying having heard the president saying shithole. Trump has not clarified to aides what he said, but told reporters Sunday night in Florida that comments attributed to him were not made. The White House has not yet denied that Trump used a vulgar term and indicated Tuesday that no apology would be forthcoming. Enough of that, because we still have more. We have some more McCain's stuff and Trump stuff, because this is one of the things that I don't know, has concerned me about this president. Now, we haven't gotten too much into pro-Trump, anti-Trump stuff here. I know Jonny Torres when he was on the show. A staunch Republican, but even he, as a conservative Republican, has his issues with the current president. But when the president at the beginning of the year, last year, started attacking, listen, the tit for tat, the back and forth between the media and Donald Trump is fine by me. The back and forth between him and CNN, okay, but where he crosses the line for me, because he has to understand that he's the president. I don't think sometimes he even realizes that. Is that when you call the press, quote unquote, enemy of the state, unquote, enemy of the people, to me that is crossing into a different area where I am definitely not comfortable. And neither are a lot of people, including Senator John McCain. On Tuesday, condemned the president's combative attitude towards the press. Quote, whether Trump knows it or not, these efforts are being closely watched by foreign leaders who are already using his words as cover as they silence and shutter one of the key pillars of democracy. And that's what you have to understand. That's what we all have to understand about journalism and about the media, is it really is one of the pillars of democracy. And if those words coming out of my mouth infuriate you, and make you want to put your fist through the computer, hold on a second. I'm not saying it's a perfect institution, I'm not saying it's without its flaws, that it doesn't need to be looked at, that it doesn't have some reconciliation to do amongst its own, just like the members of Congress, Senate, House, the executive branch, the judicial branch, corporate America, religious America, Wall Street, Main Street. All these things are pillars of democracy. All of them have issues and that need to be addressed. But that doesn't mean that the media or the federal government or a financial institution or a religious institution, that the crosshair should be put on any one of those as that's the problem with America right now. No, everybody's got their own shit that they need to handle, but that is definitely not the issue with America. There's no issue with America. We might have our issues. McCain called the Trump administration's treatment of journalists inconsistent at best and hypocritical at worst, particularly when it comes to condemning attacks on the press abroad. McCain cited other foreign leaders who have adopted the term fake news, which is Trump's preferred moniker for unfavorable press coverage. By the way, fake news means nothing anymore, right? Fake news means nothing. What I mean by that, it's meaningless. Because of the way that it's used now, fake news is, I think the definition of fake news is probably news that you don't like, news that you don't want to hear. That's what fake news is now. News that you don't like, news you don't want to hear, that's fake news. McCain suggested Congress should take it upon itself to encourage allies to review their policies that ensure freedom of press, authorize foreign assistance to support independent media outlets, and condemn violence against journalists. We cannot afford to abdicate America's long-standing role as a defender of human rights and democratic principles throughout the world, McCain said. McCain's op-ed was published the night before his fellow Arizona Republican Senator Jeff Flake is set to deliver a speech slamming Trump for labeling the media the enemy of the people. Flake, who is retiring from the Senate when his term expires next January, is expected to compare Trump's use of the term to Soviet Union dictator Joseph Stalin's use of the term, according to experts of the. And we've already heard that. We've already seen that and heard that where people are warning the president, going, "Listen, you're using the same verbiage that Stalin used in order to drive a wedge between the people and the press so that he could take over. You're using the same language that Mao used. So be very careful when you're calling." Listen, again, the press has their issues. Journalists have their issues. The media, go after them. But don't. The enemy of the state stuff is very scary to me. All right. Let's move on to how you doing, Cord? See, you've wandered in the room this morning. You just wandered in to do a little observing while you're here before you start your day, or do you want to hop down and chat about it? Or is there anything on your chest? Listen.
Nothing on my chest.
Nothing on your chest? Well, let's see. I don't have a camera for you though. I don't have a camera for you. So you'll have to grab this one and
right here.
Yeah, grab that one there. Put it on yourself, and then we'll jump in there. All right, while you're getting yourself set up there, Cords, let's talk about Woody Allen. And Woody Allen has been an interesting figure recently because after the Harvey Weinstein stuff broke, that Woody Allen and somebody like Roman Polanski have been running around Hollywood. Well, Roman Polanski I don't think is allowed in the country, but have been running around these crowds for years, and with everybody knowing their past, their history. So it's curious why Woody Allen hasn't been dragged into what's happening now. Well, according to ABC News, a growing number of actors are distancing themselves from Woody Allen and his next film, heightening questions about the future of the prolific 82-year-old filmmaker. And a Hollywood newly sensitive to allegations of sexual misconduct. Timothy Chalamet on Tuesday said he will donate his salary for an upcoming Woody Allen film to 3 charities fighting sexual harassment and abuse. Time's Up, the LGBT Center in New York, and Rain. The breakout star of Call Me By Your Name announced on Instagram that he didn't want to profit from his work on Allen's A Rainy Day in New York, which wrapped shooting in the fall. Quote, "I want to be worthy of standing shoulder to shoulder with the brave artists who are fighting for all the people to be treated with respect and dignity they deserve." All right, now Chalamet is just the latest cast member of an Allen production to express regret or guilt about being professionally associated with this guy. Finally, after 30 years, 40 years. So we'll go from that to Dylan Farrow, because Farrow is set to discuss her sexual assault allegations against her adoptive father on CBS as growing number of stars distance themselves. So this leads into this story with Dylan Farrow will appear on television to discuss her sexual assault allegation against her adoptive father, Woody Allen, which he rejects as untrue and disgraceful as a growing number of stars distance themselves from the director. The interview, which aired on Thursday, Farrow's first television, or will air today actually, comes after she used a newspaper article to question why Allen had been spared by the revolution that ended studio mogul Harvey Weinstein. Quote, "I am credible. I am telling the truth. And I think it's important that people realize that one victim, one accuser matters, and that there are enough to change things," Farrow said in an extract released on Wednesday. The filmmaker, 82, faces renewed questions over his alleged behavior as he prepares for the release of his latest film in Hollywood that is coming to grips with its history of sexual harassment and abuse. Allen, who's always denied the allegation, was investigated over the claim he molested Farrow in an attic in 1992 when she was 7, but he was not charged. The revival of the allegations against Allen has prompted several actors to apologize for appearing in films made by the director. The Chalamet I just told you about. Others to distance themselves from Allen is to include To Rome with Love's Greta Gerwig, Wonder Wheel's David Krumholtz, and Mira Sorvino, who won an Oscar for her role in the 1995 Mighty Aphrodite, and she has vowed to never work with him ever again. However, Alec Baldwin, who worked with Allen on 3 occasions, expressed his support for the director on Tuesday, noting that the director has been the subject of a criminal investigation which had produced no charges against him, and saying his rejection was unfair and sad. All right, so that's the latest on that one. All right, well, let's bring in Cords. How you doing, buddy?
Great, man. How are you doing today?
Doing all right, ladies and gentlemen. This is Cords Owen, the owner, founder of Bake More Pies here, and the infrastructure for the Wake.Show, and the creative mastermind behind the show as well.
Creative mastermind.
He's wandered into the studio. How you doing this morning?
Great, man. Doing real good.
It looks like you have not prepared for the freeze later.
It's going to get colder.
Yes. Yeah. Did you not know this?
Not really. I mean, I don't even, ever since I moved to Florida, I don't even look at the weather, really. I mean, I kind of always just figure it's going to be
all right.
Average. I mean, it's kind of like it gets colder in the winter, but not too cold, but it's going to get colder.
It is, yeah, it's going to get colder, and it's going to be freezing by the time, or close to freezing by the time you leave here today. It's going to drop down into the 30s and even 20s in some parts of the Bay Area.
That's like you were talking about at your race event in Jacksonville, where as the sun came out, it got cold.
I couldn't believe. How does that happen? I don't even know how something like that happens. Where you, it's 41 degrees, or no, actually it was in the 50s. Or no. I guess it was the upper 40s, and yeah, by the time that we got going, about 8 o'clock in the morning, it had cooled down as the sun was coming up to 41 degrees. But anyway, enough of that.
Well, we were sitting down yesterday at lunch, and one of the other agencies that we work with quite a lot, they were saying how their clients, and even we have another partner agency we work with in Birmingham, and everybody was packing up to go home, and we're sitting out at lunch down in our little picnic area down there, and it's 71 degrees, cute little cotton ball Disney clouds, up in the sky, and everybody else across the country's, freaking out because of the weather.
Yeah, Sarah in Minnesota says she is still recovering after 3 weeks from getting influenza A. It morphed into bronchitis and ear infections. Doctors told me flu shot was ineffective this year and didn't cover the strains that are traversing the country. Shakes fist.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I'm glad. I mean, I hope that I make it through without getting that flu. Just getting the little head cold that I got last week. That's going to linger for weeks. I know you're still coughing here and there.
Yeah, I can't shake this. It's like I've got this. I don't feel bad. I don't have any aches or anything. It just every now and then I feel like I got a cough.
So, by the way, have you talked to our boy Jonny Torres? Have you talked to him? You know how his first week went and everything.
Yeah, no, Johnny's doing great. We've got a great relationship with Johnny. We're really super proud of him with the work. You know, with him going to go support Marco Rubio, and you know now he's a federal employee. Right?
Yeah.
You know, it's funny. You know, because you know conservatives are always talking about bad government, but you know now Johnny's a government employee, but he's on the he's fighting the fight. So
he's the Ron Swanson of the Bay. Did you ever watch Parks and Recreation?
I always wanted to, but I never seemed to have the right channel package or whatever to watch it.
Definitely a funny show, and I think it's on Hulu if you want to fire it up. But Ron Swanson really, I think, one of the best characters on television in the last 25 years.
Now he's the comedian, right?
Yeah, I always forget his real name.
Have you ever seen the short he did? It's called The Gunfighter. It was an award-winning short film. It's about 10 minutes long, and it is absolutely hilarious.
No,
he voiced over the whole thing. It was great.
Did you ever? Oh, Nick Olaf.
Is that who I'm talking about?
Right, that's his name. I mean, I'm
sure it's not very interesting to everyone like me talking about things I don't know about.
Nick Off. Is his name Nick Offerman? Yeah,
that's the guy.
Who
that's who I'm talking. That's who I thought you were talking about. Is that the actor that plays Ron Swanson?
That is him. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Then I am talking about what I'm talking about.
Okay. There's another video he did too, where he is just sitting in a chair.
Yeah.
There's a fire, and he's just sipping on some whiskey. I don't know, some scotch or something like that. And I want to say it's an hour long. It might be 45 minutes, like 45 minutes to an hour. Never says a word, and the whole time, just sitting there in the chair.
You know, Chris, you look a little bit like him. If you grew a beard,
I could see it. I could see it. But yeah, a very funny guy.
Yeah,
anyway,
so I did touch base with Johnny this morning.
I'm sorry.
Okay,
to my point. So his character on Parks and Recreation, he is an anti-government libertarian. That works for the city. It works for Parks and Recreation.
Parks and Recreation.
It is such a brilliant character. But anyway, you were saying you're talking to Johnny.
No, I talked to Johnny. I wanted to see if he wanted to come on the show this morning. He said he'd call in. Has he called in yet?
No, I said the same thing, and I pulled up Messenger for him. I mean, I can just pop him right. We can see about just calling him blindly.
Yeah, let's see if we can reach out.
All right. We'll just call Johnny blindly and see what happens here.
That's good. And we've got a couple of other guests that are coming on in the coming days.
Yep.
So you've got your good buddy coming back?
Yeah, Chris McCarty's coming back tomorrow. Going to bring his guitar.
What are we talking about tomorrow? Well, last time we talked about death and reincarnation.
Yeah, I'm going to tell him to talk about the opposite. That's why he wants to come back on, Yeah. Because he feels bad. He was thinking back, and he's like, man, we got way too heavy. Can I please come back and make good? Like, sure, man.
I think he should just play it, invent soundtracks as we go through the show.
He can
strum.
He is that talented, by the way. I've had him on past shows of mine where I just give him some topics, and he'll just write a song while he's sitting there in the green room right before he comes on the air with us.
Maybe we can write the Wake.Show intro, the Wake.Show jingle tomorrow.
He'd be all about that. Yeah,
let's do that.
Want some fun with that. All right, so let's see. It says that I am connected to Johnny Torres, but I don't see anything. Johnny, can you hear me? Check test 1 2 1 2. Let's try this again. I don't want to waste too much time on this.
Give it a shot.
Please rate the quality of your call. No. How about you pull back up when I need to pull back? I love this. I love technology. Let's try it again.
Well, I'm excited. We've got another Bake More Music coming this Thursday. And I think maybe we should just stream it on the Wake.Show as well.
I think it's a great, let's simulcast
stream this thing.
We'll do that. There he is. There's a buddy. Wait, where'd he go? He disappeared all of a sudden.
No, I'm still...
Johnny, come in, Johnny.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I can't see you, but I can hear you.
No, I'm still getting ready for work. I don't think anybody wants to see that at 8 o'clock in the morning.
All right. Well, I think you're wrong on that one.
So, no, I could talk to you. I just, I don't know that I'm ready to reveal myself to the world just yet.
I understand. Well, no, we wanted to check in with you. I know that, you have a real job now, and you're working for the government.
Wait, Bake More Pies is a real job.
Is it a job if you love what you do?
All right. So obviously we're talking to Jonny naked. Yesterday when I called him, I hear the splashing in the background. I think he's giving his daughter a bath or something. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, is it bath time? He's like, no, I'm shaving. He's here. He said they're shaving, talking to me. But it takes that kind of talent, that kind of multitasking in order to run 6 counties, service 6 counties.
But, it's tough, man, because I was listening to you, of course, talk about the day's news and the continued fallout from the president's comments last week. And that's probably going to be the most challenging part about my job, is just keeping my mouth shut.
Well, I know, when you first took this job and asked, well, can you come on every week and talk politics? You're like, nah, not really. And so I didn't even know if we could just check in with you like this and just see what you're putting on, as you're getting ready for work in the morning.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Unfortunately, as often happens in politics, you can pretty much take anybody's words and take them as official statements or comments. Even last night, I was at a local Republican Party meeting, and William March of the Tampa Bay Times was present at the meeting. He was covering the meeting because we were having an election, special election for somebody who had resigned from the board. And so he and I are just chatting because we've gotten to know each other over the years after the meeting. And so I'm like, all right, see you, Bill. And then as we're walking, he's like, oh, don't worry, all of this is off the record. I'm like, all right, thank you. So, it's unfortunately that kind of relationship, where you gotta, you gotta kind of keep your checks and balances, because you never know if who you're talking to is willing to leverage something you say as official commentary for the media. So.
After he said that, Jonny, did you go, oh crap? Like, did you all of a sudden play back the conversation in your head, going, what did I say?
No, I mean, I've done this long enough now to where if I know I'm talking to a member of the media, again, and I think this just comes from years of broadcasting, really, which is that you're always cognizant of who you're talking to, right? So I know that I'm speaking freely, but I'm also being very selective about what and how I say things. Not that Mr. March is a bad guy. He's a great reporter. He's been in the market for a long time. But I'm sure if I were to say something offensive or salacious or something like that, he may be inclined to use it as fodder for a piece.
Yep.
And so while I have developed friendships with a lot of people in the media over the years, you learn pretty quickly who you can trust and who you can't, but you still always want to keep that guard up.
All right. Well, listen, we'll let you get back to putting your pants on. Well, just real quickly, how's your first week? Your first week there, you've been in the new job now 8 days. This will be your day number 8.
Yeah, well, 7 technically, because again, now being a federal employee, I got Martin Luther King Day off.
Oh, so. Very nice. Very nice.
And I was able to. I did a little bit of work. I went and I attended the Tampa Martin Luther King Day Parade in an official capacity, and introduced myself to some of the leaders in the community and that sort of thing. And the job overall so far is going great. It's been fascinating to get all the phone calls from people on both sides of the aisle. And really tap into what they're feeling, right? Like what they are prioritizing, like what matters to them. And so, I mean, of course, people are moved by the media cycle. So, we did get a lot of calls on the president's comments starting Friday, and even yesterday I was still getting calls about it.
So why are people calling their congressmen? Oh, jeezums. Are you okay? Did you just fall down?
No, it wasn't me.
Oh.
I'm fine.
So why is it they're calling the senator's office when the president says something? Like, are they calling to start just yelling at Marco Rubio? Are they polite when they're on the phone?
Well, because they want to. So the senator, like any senator, really, they all have to work with the president. And this is what I try to explain to people, because they want the senator to come out and condemn or repudiate the president for what he said. And the senator put out a statement, and from a much more pragmatic standpoint, talking about how obviously the folks that may have been offended by what was said by the president, are a big community here in Florida. There's a large Haitian community. There's a large African community in Florida. And, they contribute through not only serving our country, but starting businesses. And so that was more of his approach in response to what the president said. But people want him to come out and be like, hey, look, what you said was wrong. And so there's that approach. And then also I think it's partially because if you call the White House, obviously you're not going to get very far. You may have to leave a message. I mean, you don't feel like you're actually accomplishing much. And I think the fact that congressional offices, Senate offices, you'll eventually reach somebody. I think it gives them that sense of, okay, I reached somebody, in the hopes that this will eventually get to either the senator, congressman, or maybe even the president in some form or fashion.
Jonny, how many of the phone call, percentage-wise, the percentage of the phone calls that you can tell are, for lack of a better term, professionals that are, calling offices constantly versus, maybe it's, somebody right here in Polk County, calling for the first time or, that kind of stuff?
I would say probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 to 40% of the people that call, or you can tell, are people that have called previously. And the giveaway is, and this is new to me, because, for everybody who is watching the show, the fascinating thing about this is that if you do call your senator or your congressman and talk to someone, or even if you do leave a message, there is a log, a phone log that all that goes into. And so we don't track names, but we track zip codes and we track issues. And so they are watching, they are keeping a monitoring what people are responding to, what is a priority to them. And so that way, they can adequately represent the priorities of the constituency. And so the giveaway when people call is that they know to give their zip code. Most people who call for the first time don't know that's a thing. And so you actually have to ask them to give you their zip code. But the giveaway for the people that I call frequently are like, oh yeah, and I live in zip code XXX. And they'll, and so you realize, okay, this person's called before on a different issue or something like that.
Well, all right. So what you're saying is that you're having a good time, things are going well, and you're not coming back to the show anytime soon.
So far, it's been going well. I've already been fortunate to help a couple people through some issues with our federal agencies. It's fascinating because I've gotten a little bit of a taste of a little bit of everything. I've done already a little bit of the attending of events in official capacity. I've already talked to constituents about issues. I've been able to help a few constituents with issues. It's been a nice kind of transition into the role, and I'm trying to do. It's been really interesting. I'm really enjoying it so far, and I think people. I think if people all really understood how they can leverage, our elected officials in a positive way, I think there might not be as much turmoil. It's like I don't ask anybody when they call, well, are you Republican or are you Democrat, or do you like or not like the senator? Like that's not even in the equation. The office is there to help everybody, and so that's rewarding. And again, it's been fun to kind of feel like even starting week 2, you're already helping people out and having an impact.
Well, you had an impact on my life in the very short period of time that you were in it. All right, Jonny, we will talk to you soon, man.
Same here. Talk to you soon. Keep it up. Keep up the great work.
Thank you. You too. Jonathan Torres, who is part of the Wake.Show, who's one of the founding members of the Wake.Show. but got a job offer from Senator Marco Rubio and is off to bigger and better things. It was cool. Not bigger and better things, just a different calling, different type of a calling there. It was cool to get to know Jonny the way that I got to know him, Cords, because he is such a staunch Republican. And Republicans have a tendency to have a stereotype that goes along with them.
He is a Republican, but I think he's principled. I think
very
that's
compassionate.
That's more accurate, to be honest, because I think that affiliating. I think anybody really affiliating themselves with any one tribe or political party these days is
not easy to do.
Well, it's not. I mean, it's kind of funny, just if you pay close attention to how both of those. Maybe you can call them like tribes, really. Because, but Jonny's a very principled guy. He believes in capitalism. His family comes from a part of the world where there has been the whole socialist thing like happen, and there is corruption, and he was born like his family came from Colombia, around the time when Nancy Reagan and all the cartel stuff and all that stuff that was going on down there, and all of that stuff was transitioning. And so his family, he grew up in a house where he was communicated to about those kinds of issues all the time, and so he really believes in the freedom that he has here, and wants to do whatever he can to help others like take advantage of the freedoms they have here.
All right, so do you know the line to the office where he's at? We'll just make sure all the listeners of the show, the viewers of the show, just call him up and say hi.
Well, it's interesting because from what I understand, you can't even bring a cell phone. You can't bring an Apple Watch. There's no recording devices or anything allowed into his office. Wow,
that's why he's got to call us from the bathroom.
Yeah, exactly. No, he's allowed to. He's done all the background checks and everything.
Okay.
But
so wait, you say if I were to go visit him at the office, I would have to check my cell phone.
Maybe just leave it in the car.
Oh, okay.
Right.
So I'm not secretly, surreptitiously recording conversations with anybody.
Right,
and,
exactly.
Leaking them to, what's his name, James O'Keefe?
James O'Keefe, right, the Veritas Project. Exactly.
Well, cool. Right. Thank you so much for stopping in and saying hi this morning, Cords.
Yeah, man. Well, I'm having fun. If I can stick around a little bit longer, I'd love to.
I was gonna wrap the show. Unless you if you want, I got a couple of other things we could talk about. Let's see, the teachers. 5 things you need to know about the teacher pay negotiations here in Hillsborough County. Mm-hmm. Or let's see what else here. Oh no, we got. Never mind. The Detroit man that was deported to Mexico after 30 years in the U.S. But though I feel like we're on a high note, and these will just bring us down a couple notches. I can save them for tomorrow. I'm gonna need.
We can do that.
Yeah, I'm gonna need material for tomorrow because tomorrow's my long day.
Yeah, no worries. I did reach out to I was just teamwork, right? Trying to just figure out ways that I can help bring in some more. Just interactivity, some more colors to the whole show, while we're still working on finding our next producer and co-host. And so I reached out to my boy Vinny, who's an author, and he's really kind of active in the community. Reached out to a couple other people. I have a good friend.
Now you said he's an author, right?
He's an author. He wrote a book called Unlocking the Labor Cage. And basically, it has to do with he's a very principled. He's almost like he's a libertarian type guy as well, and he's been writing about how corporations have a responsibility, a social responsibility to give back and to support the communities that they draw from. And to be honest with you, I wholeheartedly agree. When you look at what we're doing around here at Bake More Pies and how we are supporting people through, our Bake More Music event and everything else. It's, I think it's really important.
Cords is going to put me through Dale Carnegie, one of those courses coming up.
That's
here.
Another great example.
So, well, it is. Well, because here's the thing: is you're supposed to read a few books before the course starts, and the reading thing was just not working out. So I went ahead and downloaded the book too, and it is very fascinating, Cords, because it has given me a different perspective. Just so far, I'm only a few I don't know how many chapters in.
Yeah.
But yesterday, while I was sealing grout,
Yeah.
I had it blaring through the house instead of blaring music to
No,
dance.
it's a great idea.
Yeah, I was blaring Dale Carnegie's books
Yeah.
through the house while I was sealing the grout yesterday.
Well, that book that you're reading, it's one book, but it's actually there's the first part of the book is one book, and then the second part is a second book, and that class, the reason, so at Bake More Pies, so there's a few cultural things that I like to try to create here at Bake More Pies, and one of the things that I do is every single employee goes to the Dale Carnegie class, every single employee, and I've also given the class to one other person who's not an employee, and I'm obviously giving you a scholarship too. I'm paying for you to go there. And the reason I'm doing it is because about 10 years ago when I took the class, I had this, particular worldview in terms of like how I interacted with people. And when I actually went to the class, the company I worked for sent me there. And when I was there, I kind of went in with this cocky attitude that, why am I here? Like, this class is about leadership. I've been, the captain of every sports team I've ever been on. Just
you've been a leader of sales teams and stuff like that.
All kinds of things, like whatever. Just throughout my experience, like my life experience at that point, like I had been in leadership positions the whole time, and so I didn't understand why I was there, right? And so I went there and I kind of had like a crappy attitude the first visit or two, first class or two. And at that point, I think it was an 8 or 10 week, probably a 10-week class, and you would go once a week and it would be 3 hours. And so I was there, and about 2.5, 3 classes in, I started thinking, okay, I'm going to open up and I'm going to see, I'm here. I might as well get as much as I can out of it. And I really opened my mind to it. And one of the things I really like about the book that you're reading is that
listening to an audiobook.
Yeah. Well, you know what? To me, it's I actually am able to absorb a book way better as an audiobook. So I don't think you're like taking a shortcut at all.
No, and I think you're right because it depends. Because a lot of times when I'm reading a book, especially if it's a book that I'm trying to retain, I'll realize that I've just read a page or 2 or 3, but never really, because my brain went somewhere else, even though my eyes were going over the words, and then I'll flip back another page or 2 or 3 and start over again.
Right, and I don't know what it is about me personally. Like, I really enjoy the audiobooks, but we'll get back to that in a second. The book that you're reading, using air quotes, reading, what I love about it is that it talks about just our human nature and about how we as just individuals, how we interact with people. And it happened way before a time when there were all these other distractions. I mean, we've got these, the Black Mirror type stuff. We've got these things blowing up all the time.
Yeah, Dale Carnegie goes back to the early 1900s.
It's 100 years old.
Yeah.
Right. It's actually like 104 years old. Yeah. And so basically the principles, the human principles that were created, when you go back and you listen to the lessons and you look at, there's a whole list of about 30 different principles throughout the entire course that you go through. But when you reflect on them, they're all kind of like things your grandmother would have told you when you were baking cookies with her in the kitchen when you were 6.
Right.
But they don't mean anything. I mean, it makes sense. It's logical, but it means something to you as an adult when you go back through and learn this stuff a second time.
Well, one of the things that I don't know stood out to me in the first 6, 7, 8 chapters or wherever I am, is the philosophy of helping other people. Because from my vantage point in business, especially because I've been in the media world for a long time now, I've been in the media world for over 20 years, and it is a very ruthless industry. And very just like anything else in the corporate world, is very bottom line driven. And so I've just been getting a nastier and nastier taste in my mouth when it comes to big business, right? So even when I first started doing, you and I first started talking and we were approaching this show, and I just there's that hesitation that I have because I don't know, man. Like I get capitalism. I understand that it is an amazing engine to drive wealth, but I also think it can be a very destructive force as well. And you've heard me liken capitalism, for those people that treat capitalism like it's a GD religion,
right?
Liken capitalism to the discovery of the splitting of the atom. Right? The splitting of the atom leads to two things. One, it can lead to powering the entire globe. To release the energy within an atom, nuclear energy, we can power the entire globe. But what else comes with that knowledge?
Exactly.
The knowledge to destroy the entire planet with that same knowledge. And so capitalism, to me, I feel is kind of in that same category.
Well, that's why what Vinny, just to go full circle and get back to what Vinny's talking about, in my conversations with Vinny, that's what he's talking about, is that there's like a morality, and there's, once you cross over that line of being greedy, and in some ways it's the stock market and the people who are focused on dividends and things like that. Like when a corporation is incentivized by when they have access to millions and millions and millions of dollars that can fuel more growth and all the different things that they want to do based on their bottom line. Well, then that's where you run into these problems where the incentives aren't necessarily in the right place, because you've got short-term and long-term goals, and I think that's where we kind of get in some of the problem areas.
Well, one of the things that fascinated me about you in our early talks was how much you were talking about helping other people.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you're helping clients. And first in my head, I'm like, oh, what a bullshitter!
Right,
what a
exactly.
bullshitter helping people. You're trying to help people, remove money from their wallets. But the more I got to know Cords, the more I was like, I think he's being honest. And then now that I'm into this course, into this book, I'm going, oh, I see now, because that is the underlying principle, philosophy of this course is don't think about what it is I can say or do in order to free that person of their money and put it in my pocket. It's like you have something to offer, right? You have either a talent, a service, a product, something. You have now you go find those people. Go, how can I help you? Listen, this is what I do. What are your needs? Awesome, I can help you out. Or what do you need? Oh, I don't do that. Let me point you to somebody else. I do have a friend over here that does that. Or I know of this business over there that can help you.
And if you do that, your life will be way better, and your business will be way better, and you'll have less turnover. Because if it's not, and that kind of just goes back to the whole reason why we call our company Bake More Pies, is that it's about win-wins. We've worked with companies before when they come to us and they're like, do we need to spend $50,000 a month to buy this media? And I'm thinking, it's way smarter to spend $5,000 or $10,000 and let's run a couple pilots and find out like what's actually working. Because if I blow all that money and it doesn't work, well, then I've just lost a client and I've wasted all that energy.
And that somebody's going to badmouth you from,
Exactly. It's not worth it. I mean, we almost have no turnover. I think in our entire length of the company that we've, been around, we've only lost a couple of clients. And in my mind, I mean, I feel like we did everything right. We tried to help them and,
well, not everything's going to work.
Yeah. I mean, everything doesn't work all the time, but the whole idea is that, and, we've had this discussion about selling what you're used to in the radio world, where they've got all the pressure and they've got sales goals, and somebody says, okay, you're supposed to hit $1 million quota this year. And what's that based on? Well, it's based on some annual plan that they did once a year based off their corporate objectives, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
And so those salespeople are out there slinging radio, and they're trying to sell it to people that, anybody that'll buy it so they can meet their goals. And so that's why we don't have sales quotas around here. Like, basically, when you put that kind of pressure on people, you end up with bringing crappy deals, and everything doesn't. I mean, you even said that one story about that endorsement you made on that one product where
that I still to this day feel horrible about.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
It was called Body Solutions. It was called Body Solutions, and you took a teaspoon of this solution at night 2 hours before you went to bed, and then you don't eat or drink anything.
Right, whatever.
Anyway,
We've
it was
all
a
heard
scam.
it. There's like
it was a
20.
scam.
Yeah, exactly. Well, so anyhow, the whole idea is that I know for a fact that what we do works because we are transparent about everything all the way through the entire life cycle of doing the planning. We get buy-in from the client. We track everything. It all goes to the analytics. We teach our clients how to read the analytics. It's like an ongoing type relationship. And so I've got nothing to worry about because it's a team team effort.
And the way that I look at the universe, I don't want to say I'm a law of reciprocity kind of a guy, but for me, I feel like the more you give, the more you get back.
That's exactly right.
And that's the way I won't say I live my life. I'm all kind of like I'm just out there giving. I don't have anything to give. But I feel like
that's not true.
Well, emotional, whatever. Yeah, you're right. But I feel like the more you again help somebody else, the more that it really will come back to you one way or another. And that's the premise. It seems so far this Carnegie course you got me going through.
That's exactly. I mean, dude, that is exactly what you're going to learn. And there's just simple things, really, really simple things that will make a huge difference in your life. It changed my life when I took the class. I felt better at night. I was happier. It sounds like hocus pocus, but it's just doing some basic, simple things, and that's why I send my entire company there. Well,
we got off a little bit on the side note here, but what we were talking about is his buddy Vinny, who's got a new book out called Corporate Empathy. So we'll be talking to Vinny coming up on the show. Is that tomorrow or is that next week?
I think he wants to come in next week.
Okay.
This week was bad for him, but he's a thought leader. I think that's what's really cool about Vinny is, he lives what he preaches. Vinny has been a part of some very successful companies, that have been regarded as leaders in their verticals in the past, decade or two. And Vinny said, you know what, I'm really passionate about this thing. I think it'll help make the world a better place. Vinny's traveled all over the world. Just a couple of months ago, he was in Europe meeting with people about this type of a thing. And it's a morality, it's an empathy, it's like a layer that goes along with capitalism, that morality comes from either religion, blah, 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 wherever it comes from. In his case, I think it's more of a secular thing. We can ask him about it.
Yeah.
But it's that layer of morality that goes along with capitalism that actually protects against your splitting the atom analogy. So it's the fail-safe on the reactor, so to speak, right? It prevents the meltdowns. It helps make sure that it's always a positive thing. And when you do it that way, I think he's right.
All right, looking forward to the conversation with Vinny coming up next week. Now let's turn to the comments this morning, Cords.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. Because while you and I have sitting here been talking about business philosophy over the past 15 minutes, John and Elliot have been going back and forth about the language used at the White House. John Sweeney says, the funny thing about this whole thing is that no one complained about the other president's language in the White House. We all remember that what LBJ said. No, we don't all remember because not all of us were born. What LBJ said, and that was racist as can be. Presidents curse. We all do, so move on and do what's best for the country and stop trivializing this. So Elliot responds, the conversation shifted to the issue of language, but the issue is not the language. He asked why we have to take more Africans and Haitians instead of more Norwegians. He wants less people of color in America and more white Europeans. That's troubling to me, says Elliot. So John says LBJ said that he would have the N-words voting Democratic for the next 100 years after signing the Civil Rights Bill. Now, that was troubling, but no one complained about that. I would imagine someone complained about it. I'm sure they didn't just, I've heard that before. By the way, is that a true thing? Is that a myth or is that a real thing? Did
I don't know if he actually said that.
Did Lyndon?
I'm not sure I understand.
What the hell is his name?
Lyndon Baines Johnson.
Lyndon Baines Johnson. All right, here we go. Did Lyndon Baines Johnson actually say that he would have N-words voting Democratic for the next 100 years?
Here's what I found.
Okay. I found this on the web for did Lyndon Baines Johnson actually say that he would have N-word voting Democratic for the next 100 years?
That's not enough. You just brought up Lyndon B. Johnson's Wikipedia page.
Yeah, maybe he can share a link. If he thinks he said that, maybe he can, in the comments section, maybe he can share a link to the quote.
All right. LBJ quote.
Yeah, I mean, at least, I'm just trying to, so John, could you please share a link
all right,
to that quote?
Well, I'm going to Snopes.
Okay, well, Snopes, I mean, come on.
Well, what, you don't like Snopes?
I don't know. I mean, I follow a lot of different media outlets. I mean, it's almost entire. I mean, I don't know. I feel like it's biased. I don't think. I feel like Snopes is biased. Personally, I do.
Well, would that so that what you're saying is they would lie in this moment?
I don't know. I mean, maybe he said it, but let's just see.
Let's see what Snopes said. A viral. It's interesting because when I talk to conservatives, those people who consider themselves conservatives, like to me, Snopes is not politically leaning one way or another. But when I talk to conservatives, they all tell me that no, Snopes is a liberal rag.
Right. I think after what was it? Swift boating. When did that happen? That was the whole term that came out.
That was Mitt Romney, right?
I know. Right. So it was when he beat the guy who used to be our Secretary of State in the election. It was George W. Bush beat I can't even remember John Kerry in the election because he was whipped. So it was like that was just one of those evolutions of media
John Kerry, right.
in the and on the internet. So what happened, like my opinion, what Snopes is, I mean, just me being I mean, obviously, I don't know if you guys can tell, but I'm a little conservative. I believe in capitalism and all those types of things. But so once that happened, I feel like there was like a whole lot of different other outlets that came out. Like, I mean, obviously, Drudge Report came out much sooner, and then there was Drudge Retort, right? So it's sort of like Snopes is like the, in my opinion, liberal swift boating tool of that side,
Okay.
Yeah. So we'll see what they say. I mean, a
viral quote circulating since the 90s attributes the following statement to Lyndon Baines Johnson, the 36th president. "I'll have those N-words voting Democratic for 200 years. It's cited in various contexts as an example of LBJ's opportunism, as an example of his crassness, as an example of his racism and hypocrisy, and as an example of the racism and hypocrisy of the Democratic Party in general. We don't have a high degree of confidence that he actually ever said it. However, there's no question that Lyndon Johnson, despite championing the landmark Civil Rights Act in 1964 and signing it into law, was also a... what am I doing here? Sorry about that. Let's give it another shot. There's no question that was also sometimes racist and notorious vulgarian who rarely shied away from using the N-word in private. For example, he reportedly referred to the Civil Rights Act of 1957 as the N-word bill in more than one private phone conversation with the Senate colleagues. Jeez. And he reportedly said upon appointing African-American Judge Thurgood Marshall to the Supreme Court, "Son, when I appoint an N-word to the court, I want everyone to know he's an N-word." Jeez. According to the historian Doris Kearns Goodwin, he also uttered the cynical-sounding statement, which sometimes circulates in tandem with the voting Democrat remark, quote, "These Negroes, they're getting pretty uppity these days, and that's a problem for us since they've got something now they've never had before, a political pull to back up their uppityness. Now we've got to do something about this, da-da-da-da-da-da." So according to Snopes, it is not 100% certain that he ever said, "I'll have those N-words voting Democratic for 200 years," but obviously he does have a history with that kind of using that kind of language.
Yeah, I mean, and there's a debate that goes back and forth, and if you research this stuff, you'll come across people on both sides of the aisle talking about, the Civil Rights Act and did all of a sudden the entire South flip to Republican because the Republican Party switched, or all those types of things. I really like Ben Shapiro's take on the issue,
which is,
well, he talks about how the Civil Rights Act, Republicans the entire time, ever since obviously Abraham Lincoln, have been for like a level playing field the whole entire time, and that it's basically just because Lyndon Baines Johnson was a Democrat, or I think he was a Democrat, right?
Yep,
Anyhow,
yep.
I may not know what I'm talking about, but anyhow, Ben Shapiro's got a really good. Maybe we can just look at that and talk about it another day. But anyhow, it talks about how it's not like the entire party switched and Republicans all of a sudden became racist. They never have been. And the thought was that the Democratic Party, and this is just the stuff that I read, but the Democratic Party has always been looking to take advantage of whatever shifts in the tide, in order to retain power.
I don't know. They're like, you know me. I have no party affiliations, so to me, both parties, that's exactly what they're doing. They're both opportunists.
Obviously, they're both all about power, right?
Right. They don't care.
They don't care.
In my opinion, in the end, it is about their own ideology and goals, and so whatever happens along the way, if they don't care, and they'll do whatever they got to do.
Well, the thing that disgusts me is that it's so tribal. It's like, to me, just go back to like your principles, whatever your principles are. And if your principles like fall in the Republican column, then, 90% of the time, it doesn't mean you're a Republican. It just means that you agree with whatever their platform is at the time. And 10% of the time, it could be Democrat or Independent or whatever the heck it is. It's just be principled. And then to me, research and understand what are your principles based on.
Then to me, if you're principled, then you're not part of any one of these parties because they are not principled. They
Exactly.
act like they're principled. They have a platform that makes it looks like they're principled,
Exactly.
but I don't know that they really are.
They're not.
No
they
party
are totally
affiliation.
not. It's all about the cutting up, whatever the issue is and figuring out what the opportunity for constituents are on either side of an issue.
Well, let's get back to the argument online between Elliot and John. All right, so Elliot comes back after the LBJ stuff and says, I don't know that nobody complained about it. I'm sure a lot of people complained and continued to, but I think the current president's words are more important than the president's words 50 years ago. John says, why? Elliot says, why is the current president more important than LBJ? Because he's the current president. John goes, we all curse and say stuff, and it was in a private meeting at the White House that was leaked for political gain. From what everyone is saying, they all use salty language, but only the Democrats try to use it for political gain. I say just get things done and stop with the petty stuff. And then Jonny Torres chimes in and goes, Vinny Tafuro's book is called Corporate Empathy. And then Elliot, back to the conversation. But again, it's not the language that's the issue. It's the fact that he's asking, why do we have to take people of color into our country and not more white people instead? Oh, and Vinny joined the conversations. Vinny is here.
All right.
Well,
Vinny's
he joined.
here.
He's not joined the conversation. He was watching while we were talking about him.
All right, Vinny.
But John goes, no. That is how it was spun. The point was, why take people from countries that don't help our nation, refuse to assimilate into the country versus people who actually contribute? It's not a race issue. It is an issue of bringing people who will help the country. Elliot goes, which presumes that people of color don't contribute to the country as much as white Europeans.
That's garbage. That's garbage. There's so many countries out there that have a merit-based immigration policy. It's not even funny.
You're right.
And
All
most
of them except for
famously,
us.
Exactly. It's look at New Zealand. They're famously about it.
Right.
If you want to go move to New Zealand, you better be able to contribute to their country.
Right. But one of the things why we've needed the low-skilled workers for the last century or two is because this country was built on slave labor, and we need to continue to have those same jobs be filled for as little money as possible. Where do you get that? You get that from the people fresh off the boat.
Well, there's legal immigration. There's legal work programs for low-skilled, low-cost labor that are legal.
Right. Yeah, we're not talking about illegal immigration right now. We're talking about legal migration.
So go back and look at the conversation over the last year and a half, and there's a very blurry line when people are talking about immigration, and one side of the aisle, Democrats, want to squish together illegal and legal immigration and just call it immigration, where we're not talking about...
Right. You do have people on the left side of the aisle, the Democrat side of the aisle, that are anti-border people, that want all borders around the world erased, which I completely understand. I get, and as a matter of fact, I believe will be a thing one day.
Well,
I believe we will be on a borderless planet one day, but that is not happening for another 100 generations.
Yeah, I don't know if we can get there. I mean, because you've got such different... If you look at just the incentive structure about, what does this country down here need versus what this group needs?
I think you go back further than that. You have to go back to what makes us us. Go back to us being mammals. Go back to us being
Go back to
apes.
the most famous border of all time, the Great Wall of China, and why that was even created.
Well,
right?
We are territorial.
Of course.
Okay, but you put us out in nature. We are territorial by nature, so it's only logical that we are going to set up territories.
Right.
That being said,
just resonate with whatever is in our nature, right?
That being said, but our nature constantly is in flux.
No.
And give us 100 generations.
I disagree. I don't think our nature is in flux, but I think some of our behaviors are. That's why I like the Dale Carnegie book, because our human nature.
So you think we're going to be the same humans now, a million years from now as we are today?
Well, I mean, come on, a million years? I mean, but go forward like, several hundred years at a time. If you go back and look at like what, if you say something nasty to somebody 2,000 years ago, did you think you may have hurt their feelings?
No, they would. If there was that, they would have just struck out or lashed out at you and
because you hurt their feelings, right? So, like, if you're sensitive about what you're saying and make sure that I'm just saying that there's basic human principles that will be the same forever because it's just how we are. But how we incorporate cyber technology into our, whether there's implants or stuff like that, that theoretically, in my opinion, could change our human nature. But I think, going forward, we're going to be, the same people forever, regardless of the technology or, the stuff that happens around us.
Well, I see things a little bit differently. And after reading a story last year about how our DNA, our very own DNA, from the time you're born till the time you pass, if you have a full, long 90 years on the planet, your DNA is not the same at the end of your life it is at the beginning. There is evolution that happens within you during your lifetime.
Is that all your cells, or is that a few of the cells?
Now, according to the article, it looks like up to 8%, up to an 8% change in your DNA, the code that makes you from the day you were born to the day you die. So to me, it's never ending an hour. And you say that there are certain fundamental things about humans that will still be there a million years from now and 10 million years from now? Maybe. We'll see.
That's what I mean. So just to be, just to go back, that's what I love about the education that I received at the Dale Carnegie franchise here in Tampa, which from what it looks like, they're one of the best, because I've sent people to other of the franchises in other parts of the country, and the group here in Tampa does a really fantastic job, with everything they do. But the education is that, those principles that you learn in that class are constant. They're consistent. They're gonna be there 100 years from now. They were there 100 years ago, and if you are aware of them, you'll have a happier, more successful, less stressful life. And I wholeheartedly agree, and I put my money where my mouth is. And
yes, you have. I hope it pays off for you.
So far, it has. No, I mean, just basically looking at there's been, we work in a fast-paced agency. It's a digital agency. The digital world, there's a saying that says that the internet year lasts 4 months. And, things are constantly changing. And so there's a lot of pressure, and there's a lot of pressure on the team to like keep up with whatever's the latest trends or whatever. And if you don't have some of those foundational things about how to get along with people and how to communicate with your clients, whatever, like you may look at things, or you may take things personally, where we're all just struggling together to try to keep up and do whatever the latest thing is. I mean,
do the right thing.
Right, exactly. So I see examples on a daily basis where people on the team are able to, trade information with one another, have conversations, interact with other teammates, where the conversation, the interaction was mostly positive, where I've seen similar conversations over a decade ago before I learned any of this stuff, where, man, that person could have gotten really teed off because, they disagreed or whatever, and he could have taken it personally. It could have affected their jobs for several weeks or whatever. And so that's bottom line. I mean, the personal benefits that people receive, from getting the education, but also just the corporate benefits of people being able to get along with one another.
I was talking about how I don't know, I can definitely poo-poo corporate America, big business, and so in capitalism, I can lump that in there too. But I worked for Pods for 2 days. Pods, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Pods, the container.
Mobile storage, yeah.
I was only in their training classes. Mm-hmm. One of the things I observed, though, is the other people in the class who were obviously had worked in call centers previously, because when there was those opportunities to raise your hand and contribute, there was a couple of these people that, when they came, you could tell that they've been doing this a long time. And one of the guys, very cocky, hilariously cocky to me, And at one point said, because we were talking about, getting people on the phone, how to keep them on the phone, and this and this and this. And he goes, one of the things that I've always done is when I'm talking to them, when I find out where they're from, I always say I'm from there too, or I lived there too. Oh, so you say you're from, Birmingham. Oh my God! I lived in Birmingham there for in those little tricks like there. So basically, when they would say something,
he better have an almanac at his fingertips.
Or they would say, my dogs were. Oh, what kind of dogs do you have? I have Great Danes. I have a Great Dane too.
That's such horse shit.
Right. So he brings this up in the class, and so to me, he is playing into exactly what I think all corporate America is.
Yeah, this is the
all
scumbags.
Salesperson.
Yeah,
all everything. But the instructor in the class shut him down.
Good.
And she made a point to say, no, that's not how we do business here at Pods. That's not how we want to do business. You are helping these people. People need storage.
Exactly.
We have the best way to store your stuff, and we're going to pitch that to them. We're not going to lie to them. We're not going to make false connections. Right. And so I actually was impressed in that moment, and I'm going, oh, okay, maybe the corporate world isn't as evil as I thought it was.
It depends.
It can be.
It can be. It just depends on the organization, the pressures within the organization, their sales culture, and everything else. One last story, and then I know we want to close the show for today. So I don't know if anybody ever took these, was ever in a DECA class in high school. Was anybody here in a DECA club?
That's what you get to leave halfway through the day and go work or something?
Well, so it's there's a business side of it, but there's also like a business education component to it where they're teaching you about in the work environment and things like that. And they literally have a competition where you have like a regionals where you take like a business test, and there's all these different verticals. There's like retail associate, retail management. There's all these different types of channels you can be in with the DECA Club. And it's a big organization. Every one of these students pays, $15, $50, whatever it is, to be in this club. And they have these regional, state, and then they have like a national competition. And so I was I took the retail side of it. I really enjoyed the class. And so I went to regionals, and I won regionals. I went to state. I got first in state. And then I went to the national competition back when I was 18 and went down here to Orlando. And I didn't place in the national competition, but that was one of the principles, is that if you don't have it, it's always about being helpful. If you don't have it in your store or with your service offering or whatever it is, tell the person where they can go find it, because you're ultimately helping them, and give them a good option, because the next time they need something, who are they going to ask? They're going to ask you, because they know that if you don't have it, you'll at least point them in the right direction. You're going to save them time, and you're just helping them. And that's what I believe in my core, is that that's all we're trying to do. And if we're really talented, we're really good, and really skilled at what we're doing, and we're always thinking about helping people, and we're always doing that, then you're going to be fine. You're going to be fine. Just don't get greedy.
I agree. Let's go ahead and get back to a couple of these comments before we wrap the show here. The heated discussion that's been online between John Sweeney Jr. and Elliot Hoops. Let's see here. Elliot, I'm not sure. Actually, you are presuming that the verse is the real issue. I'm not sure what other conclusion there is to draw from his statement. He wants less Haitians and Africans and more Norwegians. Why? John Sweeney. Elliot, I think it is best we agree to disagree, but I appreciate you being respectful, talking about it. And I appreciate that too. Seriously, because you know how this stuff can go.
The world needs it.
You know how this stuff can go online, and they're on opposite ends of the spectrum here, and they're being respectful online.
And that's one of the things that I was remember we were talking about, like the conversations you and I had early on, we talked about doing this show, is that, Jonny is, obviously very principled, conservative type guy, and I don't know where you stand, but I'm sure as heck not going to stifle whatever you say. I'm not going to tell you that your content has to be a certain way.
But it's personal for a lot of people, It is.
It absolutely is personal. But
when you talk about principles, sometimes it pings their principles and now you are in the enemy category. And when shit goes down, you will be in the enemy category.
Right, exactly. That's exactly right. But think about like my approach to your content on this show.
Okay.
Because this has always been your show, right? Have I ever told you can't have a certain opinion? Have I ever come in like a program manager and said, that's not the tone that we're going to take, or any of that type of thing?
No. You approach it very wisely.
Right. And what did I say about your opinion on issues and how you present them?
I don't remember.
Well, I said it's something that I said it's something that the world needs. You know, my opinion, what I thought I observed is that you and John may have a difference of opinion about things that are political, but y'all could talk about them.
Yep.
And you know, a friend of mine a long time ago told me, you know, when I first became more active on social media and we were talking about political things, a friend of mine came and said, "I can't watch Fox News; it makes my ass itch." You know, and it's because it's like it makes his skin crawl. Like you can tell, like he viscerally like disagrees with what's going on there. But when you look at the conversations that you and Jonny were having, it's like you're feeling things out. You know, your understanding and your opinions coming from a place of reason. You've thought it through at least.
Yeah, and well, you know that it's more tactic. It's more strategy on Fox News and CNN and CM, because what they're doing, they're making your ass itch on purpose. They want to set up that discussion where somebody throws out that topic. You got a couple people on this side, a couple people on this side. Ready? Yell, because we know that infuriates the people on the side. It starts to make your ass itch, and you just you want to jump through the television.
Right.
But you stick around. You watch longer.
Yeah. Well, it depends on if you agree. If you don't agree with the tone or the general philosophy of that channel, you change the channel to MSNBC or you change the channel to CNN.
But it's still, they all make my ass itch, because they get to this point where it's an arguing back and forth, and it's not between two people who have a broad scope of things. You got one guy who's very narrow-minded on one side of the issue. You got one guy who's very narrow-minded on the other side of the issue, and then just sit back and let the fireworks go. You know, and that's that. I'm like, well, I don't watch cable news like I used to.
Yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly, man.
Let's hit a couple more of these comments before we get out of here. Vinny Tafuro, still watching. Looking forward to being on next week. Looking forward to having you on, Vinny. So, John Sweeney, exactly. The problem is that illegals and illegal immigration are lumped together by different. Okay. And then, lastly, Elliot says, we were fish a billion years ago. Nothing stays the same. Chords.
Yeah, well, it didn't happen all at once.
No, you're right. It happens 8% at a time. All right. Thank you so much for being a part of the Wake.Show. Thank you so much, Chords, for stopping in this morning. Tomorrow morning, my guest will be Chris McCarty. We'll have some fun and play some music. Have a great